Hello and welcome back to Good Learners. This is Safia Siddiqui, and the chapter that we're learning today is weavers, iron smelters, and factory owners. Now, in this chapter, we learn everything about how textile and iron and steel industries played an important role in shaping the Industrial Revolution and its story in India. Now, iron and steel and textile industries are considered crucial for the Industrial Revolution. In fact, it is said that they basically shaped the Industrial Revolution. Now, due to the new inventions that were happening in Europe during the 1850s, Britain came to be known as the workshop of the world. And of course, the industrialization of Britain had a close connection to India. The East India Company and its trade with India gave Britain huge profits, but Indian crafts and industries were affected. How? We'll learn further. Now let's go back to the 1750s. Around that time, Indian cotton textiles from Bengal had a huge demand in the world market. The textiles were renowned for their fine quality and craftsmanship and were sold in Southeast Asia. Later on, European traders showed their interest too, and when these textiles went to Europe, they were referred to with different names. For example, muslin was the general term for all finely woven textiles. Calico became the name for all the cotton textiles from Calicut. Chintz was the name given to printed cotton cloth or the cheat that we use in India. Bandana can be traced back to the brightly colored cloth produced through the tie and dye method or the bandhani that we call today. The widespread use of these words show us how popular Indian textiles were in the international market. Now, by the end of the 18th century, worried by the popularity of the Indian textiles, makers in England started protesting against the import of Indian textiles. A Calico Act was imposed in Britain, where chintz printed cotton textiles were banned in England. In order to cut the competition, Indian designs were copied and printed in England in the calico printing industry. And then, with the numerous new inventions like spinning jenny and the steam engine, there was a production boom in England. Now, all of these factors affected the weavers in India. Apart from that, when the East India Company became the Diwan of Bengal, they increased the revenue. Now, they had enough money to buy the goods at lower prices in India and then gain huge profits by selling them in England. Now, we spoke of weaving as an occupation. Let's see who actually were the weavers. So there were different communities that took up weaving as their occupations. Tanti weavers were from Bengal. Julahas and Momins were from North India. Sale, Kaikollar and Devangs belonged through South India. Now let's see how weaving actually happened. It happens in stages. The first stage involves spinning, where a charkha and takli were used for spinning, and it was mostly done by women. Then the thread was woven into a cloth by the weaver, who were generally men. The dyer used to color the textile. He was also known as the rangres. Now this weaving as an occupation provided livelihood to millions of people. Now, due to the heavy competition, cotton industries developed in Britain, and it hit the Indian market in various ways. The first, Indian textiles now had to compete with the British and American industrial produce. Second, now exporting textiles became difficult as England increased the taxes on Indian textiles which were being imported into Britain. Now, all of these reasons led to the decline for the need of Indian goods in the international market. They stopped buying Indian goods and stopped giving advances to the weavers. Then, by 1830s, British goods made an entry into the Indian market. By the 1880s, 2/3 of our country wore clothes made up of British cotton. Now, due to all of these factors, there were no jobs and weaving lost its charm in India. However, handloom still had its touch, as those intricate designs could not be recreated through the British machines. It was the time of peak national movement, and so Mahatma Gandhi encouraged the people to boycott imported textiles. Now, khadi and charkha became the symbol of nationalism. Now, these weavers who were rendered jobless moved to bigger cities like Mumbai, Surat, and Bhopal in search of jobs. There were cotton mills now coming into the picture. First cotton mill was built in Mumbai, followed by Ahmedabad and Kanpur, leading to huge migration of people in search of jobs to bigger cities. Now we end the discussion of textile by introducing Tipu Sultan and his sword. We all know who Tipu Sultan was, but do we know about his famous sword? His sword was made up of Wootz steel, which produced very sharp edges and a wave-like pattern on the sword, as you can see in the picture. Now, although the technique of making Wootz got lost, it is known that this steel was produced in smelting furnaces which were present all across India. Wootz was also known as Ukku in Kannada and Urukku in Malayalam. The technique got lost over time due to the conquest of British and their steel and iron imports. Now, due to the popularity of Wootz steel, iron smelting was quite common in India. Almost every district had smelters used to deposit local ore. By the late 19th century, the art of iron smelting too saw a decline. Why? Because of the new forest laws. Now, iron smelters required wood and charcoal in order to work, and the new forest laws restricted people from moving around or even entering the forest. In some areas, the government allowed the people to enter, but then they imposed heavy taxes, leaving them no option to earn. And so, this occupation saw a decline too. Then, the steel and iron imports from Britain hit the Indian and steel iron market. Now, I'm sure you've heard about the Tatas and how they've made India self-sufficient when it comes to iron and steel. The story, however, goes back to 1904, when Charles Weld and Dorabji Tata were traveling in Chhattisgarh in search of iron ore deposits. The community of Agarias helped them find the iron ore deposits. Weld declared that Rajahara Hills was one of the finest iron ore deposits. The problem, however, was that the region was dry and water was necessary for a factory to work. Hence, a factory couldn't be established there. The search continued, and with the help of Agarias, a few years later, Jamshedpur, an industrial township, was established. The Tata Iron and Steel Company, TISCO, was set up in 1912. Now, with the offset of the First World War in 1914, Britain failed to meet the needs of iron and steel in India. The imports stopped and market now belonged to TISCO. TISCO became the biggest supplier of iron and steel for Indian Railways, providing jobs and hence gaining the trust of Indians too. With the nationalist movement and the First World War, textile and iron and steel factories became stronger in India. The British struggled during the last decade of its rule in India and had to give in to the demands of the Indians. Now, with this, we come to the end of the chapter. If you found the video helpful, please like, share and comment. Subscribe to Good Learners for more.